Hi, beautiful people. Good morning. You know, I like to catch y'all in the morning. So I know that Caroline Leavitt had a press conference yesterday, and a suspect has been detained in a Nancy Guthrie case. That situation is loaded. So because it's early, we'll see how much I can get to today, and I'm gonna get I'm gonna get right into it for the sake of time. Shadrach and Black, what are you what are you doing up? What are you doing up? I want to get to my video. There is a lot going on, and I'm trying to keep up with all of it. Keezer, what's good with you? Are we gonna have another panel this week? Later? Look at my puppy don't want to go to bed. Let me get into this video so I can listen to this press conference, you guys. Until I get over this coronavirus, my time is just going to be off because it's taking such a toll on me where I just want to sleep because I ache, okay? But I'm getting over it. We're going to have a panel later this week, okay? Okay. Keep in touch with me in my comment section. We'll do it. More than likely on the weekend. Okay, you guys. Let me get into this video. As usual, I'm going to get off camera and off my mic until I get that fixed so you guys can hear it with me, and then we'll talk about it, and then I'll go to bed. All right. Okay, Keezer. Let me know. I enjoyed you. I can be a little feisty on a panel, but I gotcha. Let me get into this video. Feel free to hit the like, double tap the screen, support the commentary. I'm gonna get right into it. Let me go into my little space. Good morning, Colin. Okay.
Her mother. The president encourages her mother. The president. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming today. I apologize for the delay. I was once again with the president. He and I were both reviewing the newly released surveillance footage from FBI in the Savannah Guthrie case on just this heartbreaking situation with respect to her mother. The president encourages any American across the country with any knowledge of the suspect to please call the FBI, who continue to assist state and local authorities who are leading this investigation on the ground. And once again, I will reiterate that the prayers of this entire White House are with Savannah and her family at this time. And we hope this person is found soon and that her mother is brought home safely. President Trump has a very busy week ahead, so I will begin with some scheduling announcements today. Tomorrow, here at the White House, the president will host Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for a bilateral meeting. The remainder of the week will be focused on energy and deregulation. Tomorrow afternoon, the president will hold an event in the East Room to tout clean, beautiful coal as America's most reliable and affordable energy source, especially during periods of peak demand, just as we saw during this most recent winter storm, which impacted hundreds of millions of Americans. The president will discuss how clean, beautiful coal is not only keeping the lights on in our country, but also driving down the cost of electricity across the country as well. Additionally, on Thursday, President Trump will be joined by Administrator Lee Zeldin to formalize $1.3 trillion in crushing regulations. The bulk of the savings will stem from reduced costs for new vehicles, with the EPA projecting average per vehicle savings of more than $2,400 for popular light-duty cars, SUVs, and trucks. This is just one more way this administration is working to make life more affordable for everyday Americans. Overall, these groundbreaking actions from President Trump will drive larger economic growth, create thousands of good-paying jobs, expand manufacturing, increase consumer choice, and improve affordability for millions of families and businesses. Finally, on Friday, President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump will travel to Fort Bragg in the great state of North Carolina to meet with military families and the heroic members of our special forces who carried out the successful Operation Absolute Resolve in Venezuela and helped bring narco-terrorist Nicolas Maduro to justice. I know the President and First Lady are both greatly looking forward to this visit. Also, the First Lady will celebrate Valentine's Day at the Children's Inn at the National Institute of Health tomorrow, with children, families, and NIH staff involved in clinical trials. In other news this week, thanks to President Trump signing the largest middle-class tax cut in history, this is shaping up to be the biggest tax refund season ever, and we are in it now. President Trump and Republicans fundamentally believe that Americans deserve to keep more of their hard-earned money, not less, which is why he fought so hard to deliver this long overdue relief. From no tax on tips, overtime or Social Security, to auto loan interest deductions on new American-made vehicles, plus increases to the standard deduction in child tax credit, more money is flowing back into the pockets of hardworking Americans. We're already hearing from everyday Americans across the country who are reporting substantial tax savings thanks to the Working Families Tax Cut, which every single Democrat in Congress voted against. AMAC, which represents millions of Americans, has heard directly from more than their 1,000 members already about how the Trump tax cuts are easing cost of living concerns. I wanted to share a few of those powerful responses with you today. This one comes from Dean and Wendy in Wisconsin, who said, quote, instead of paying out $3,700 last year, we got back $2,500 in refunds this year. This is huge for our family. Steve from California said, quote, the new senior citizen deduction is a tremendous relief and has given us peace of mind and the freedom to truly enjoy the retirement years we worked so hard for. Eric from Nevada said, as a senior, no tax on Social Security helps me tremendously. The no tax on tips helps my daughter-in-law as a waitress. The no tax on overtime helps my son, who works constantly. Our family savings from the One Big Beautiful Bill could total even more than $5,000. We love the Trump tax cuts. These are just a few positive examples of the everyday Americans that President Trump's tax cuts are uplifting. We'd love to hear more from the American people across the country who are benefiting from the Working Families tax cuts. The White House is also pleased to share that parents across the country can now officially apply to open a Trump account for their child. In order to apply, parents can visit trumpaccounts.gov and fill out the IRS form 4547. These Trump accounts are special investment accounts aimed at providing American children with a jump start on building wealth for life. They have all the tax advantages as a traditional IRA account, but are specifically tailored to build wealth the moment a child is born. Thanks to President Trump, every child born between January 1st, 2025 and December 31st, 2028 is eligible to receive $1,000 from the U.S. Treasury to fund their account. Parents, guardians, and even nonprofits can then contribute up to $5,000 per year. Employers can also contribute up to $2,500 per year per employee. President Trump believes there is no better investment than investing in our nation's children. If you are a parent who maximizes contributions to your child's Trump account, its projected value could reach nearly $1.1 million by the time your child turns 28 years old, based on average historical stock market returns. Safe to say, the Trump accounts will give a substantial head start to position the next generation for a brighter future. And with the stock market exploding under President Trump's pro-growth policies, there has never been a better time to sign up for an investment account like this. The Dow Jones just shattered 50,000 for the first time ever on Friday, and the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ continue smashing record after record. So with President Trump in charge, Americans' 401ks and retirement savings are booming once again, and these new Trump accounts for America's kids will boom too. So with that, once again, every parent should go to trumpaccounts.gov today, and I'm going to put it on my own personal to-do list to sign up for one as well. With that, I will take your questions. Karoline Downey from the National Review is here. Thank you for being here, and why don't you kick us off?
Thank you for having me. on the criticism that immigration enforcement has become arbitrary or not particularly prioritizing. Democrats have been circulating this statistic that only 14% of illegal aliens arrested under this administration are violent criminals, but we know that in deep blue cities with progressive district attorneys, it's common to plead down serious violent crimes into less serious offenses, which could be distorting those numbers. So given that backdrop, does the administration still stand by the messaging that you're targeting the worst of the worst? And does this prevailing narrative tell the whole story?
Well, thank you for bringing this up, Caroline. I've seen this CBS report floating around. There's a lot of liberal talking heads and pundits and Democrat elected politicians who think that this single story and these statistics and the way they are painted is somehow a shot at this administration. It is not. And let me correct the record. Number one, the Trump administration has been clear from day one that any illegal alien present in this country is subject to deportation. However, the priority, of course, is going after the convicted criminals, the worst of the worst, the murderers, the pedophiles, the rapists in this country. Interestingly, in the CBS story, what the Democrat talking heads on television are not saying is this line. Nearly 60% of ICE arrestees over the past year had criminal charges or convictions. And among that population, the majority of the criminal charges or convictions are for nonviolent crimes. Oh, well, what are nonviolent crimes, you ask? This has coincided with what DHS has been saying all along, that approximately 70% of illegal aliens arrested under President Trump have pending criminal charges and or prior convictions. And these so-called nonviolent crimes, drug trafficking, distribution of child porn, burglary, fraud, DUI, embezzlement, solicitation of a minor, and human smuggling, just to name a few. So just because a crime is not violent in nature doesn't mean that crime is victimless. And I can guarantee every single person who is out there on television right now pointing to these statistics that were taken out of context by CBS News would not want an illegal alien convicted of the distribution of child porn or fraud or DUI living in your community. So the Trump administration will continue our focus on deporting all illegal aliens present in our country with a focus on the worst of the worst criminals. Thank you for being here. Gabe.
Caroline, thank you. And thank you for the update on our colleague Savannah Guthrie's mother. Is there anything more you can share? You said the president was reviewing that surveillance footage. What was his initial reaction when seeing those disturbing images? And does he believe that that suspect acted alone?
I haven't talked to him specifically about the second point on whether the suspect acted alone or not. So I don't want to weigh in on the president's thinking on that. His initial reaction, of course, as all Americans, is just pure disgust. And again, it's heartbreaking to see now this footage really bring to life a story we've all been reading about. And again, we're just praying for the safety of Nancy Guthrie and that she will return home soon. And the president directed me to please encourage all Americans with any information to call the FBI. And we hope that this case will come to a positive resolution as soon as possible.
We, of course, have a lot to talk about in a completely separate topic. I was hoping you could clarify something that's come up over the last several days, again, regarding a separate topic, the Epstein files. According to newly released files, the president had a conversation with the Palm Beach police chief in the early 2000s, according to the police chief in 2019. The president has gone on record before, and he's told reporters that he said that Jeffrey Epstein, he had no idea about Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. During this conversation with the police chief, however, he did say, according to this recounting of it, that thank goodness you're stopping him. He also called Ghislaine Maxwell evil. So my two questions are, did that conversation with the Palm Beach police chief happen? And can you explain the discrepancy?
What I will say is that the president has always remained consistent and that he kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of his club at Mar-a-Lago because, frankly, Jeffrey Epstein was a creep. And unlike many other people who are named in these files, President Trump cut off his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and was honest and transparent about that for years and years. And so I think what the president has said all along has always remained true. And the release of more than 3 million documents related to Jeffrey Epstein and his heinous, disgusting crimes just shows the level of transparency that this president and administration has committed to in bringing these files to light.
But did he call the chief in 2006? Caroline, did he call the chief?
Look, phone call that may or may not have happened in 2006. I don't know the answer to that question. What I'm telling you is that what President Trump has always said is that he kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of his Mar-a-Lago club because Jeffrey Epstein was a creep, and that remains true. And this call, if it did happen, corroborates exactly what President Trump has said from the beginning. And I'm sure many of you, when you read that alleged FBI report, probably thought to yourself, wow, this really cracks our narrative that we've been trying to push about this president for many years. So we're moving on from that. Reagan.
Thanks, Caroline. I want to ask you about the SAVE Act. NBC reported that there's some hesitation among House Republicans on adding absentee ballot restrictions into the SAVE Act. Can you explain what the hesitation is among House Republicans and also just provide a status of negotiations with Congress on the legislation?
Sure. I can't speak for House Republicans, Reagan. I can obviously speak for the president, who is quite possibly the strongest supporter of the Save America Act, which, as you know, would require proof of citizenship to register to vote. It would require proof of identification, a photo identification before casting a ballot. And it would also ensure that there are exceptions made. I think that's what you're alluding to with these conversations with House Republicans for reasonable requests, of course, for our military, for individuals who are disabled and cannot make it to the polls. Those are reasonable, common sense things that I believe House Republicans are discussing amongst themselves. But as for the president, he's been very clear. He wants House Republicans and Democrats, too, if they were politically wise, to pass this legislation, for the Senate to pass it, to send it to the president's desk so it can be signed into law.
Follow-up. I'm wondering when the last time the president spoke to Leader Thune was and if he discussed using the standing filibuster to pass legislation.
The president has given his position on the standing filibuster. As for his most recent conversation with Leader Thune, frankly, I'm not sure. I do know they speak very frequently. The president's in constant communication with both Leader Thune and the House Speaker, Mike Johnson. Stephen, I see we switched up our seating chart. Your direct line of sight now. Congratulations.
Thank you to the Correspondents Association for recognizing the New York Post's reach. I've got two questions for you about the Guthrie case and then another about infrastructure. On the Guthrie case, does President Trump have a warning to the culprits here about what would happen to them, what federal consequences they would face if they do not release Nancy Guthrie unharmed?
I think anyone who was involved in this depraved crime, this abduction, of course, we want to be seen held to the fullest extent of the law possible.
And on infrastructure, can you explain why President Trump asked Chuck Schumer to help him rename Penn Station and Dulles Airport after himself? Why is he interested in having his name on those two buildings? And why are the Gateway Tunnel funds the proper point of pressure to get that to happen?
To your first question about the renaming, why not? It was something the president floated in his conversation with Chuck Schumer. As for the funding, the president has addressed that separately himself. Danny.
Thanks. Today, the vice president's account posted and then deleted a tweet about the Armenian genocide. And then last week, President Trump's Truth Social account posted and then deleted a racist video about the Obamas. And the White House again blamed that on a staffer. I wanted to ask you, does the White House have a social media problem at the moment? Do you have an auto-posting problem that's leading to these mistakes?
No. As for the Armenian tweet that you're referring to, I would just refer you back to the White House's message that was issued on Armenian Remembrance Day, and there's been no change of policy at this time. Mary.
Thanks, Caroline. When the president goes to Beijing in the spring, does he have plans to try and advocate on behalf of Jimmy Lai, who was just sentenced to 20 years yesterday?
This is something I've heard the president advocate for both publicly and privately. I had the honor of being in that meeting with President Trump and President Xi in South Korea that took place, and this was brought up by the president himself. It is important to him, and he looks forward to visiting China in April.
Caroline.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. So some Republican lawmakers from Nebraska have said they're worried that the Argentinian beef executive order will sideline some American ranchers. How will the Trump administration make sure prices go down for consumers without harming those ranchers?
Of course. Well, both things can happen at the same time. That's the president's belief. He wants to see prices come down. In fact, I just overheard him on the phone with Secretary Rollins. They were talking about something different, but he's always saying we got to make sure that prices continue to come down. As you know, Secretary Rollins successfully did that with respect to egg prices. Beef prices are coming down slightly, and the president wants to see that continue. He believes that a minor import to the country with cattle might be a short-term solution with respect to bringing down prices. But of course, protecting our American cattle and rancher industry is a priority for the president, and he's in touch with those stakeholders. We've had them here at the White House a few times in recent months to discuss this issue directly. John.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. Yesterday, the president on social media threatened to block the new Gordie Howe Bridge, which would connect Detroit to Canada. This is a bridge that was fully paid for by Canada. It used American labor to construct it. It used American steel to construct that bridge. The president in 2017 was actually in favor of this bridge, part of a joint statement that he put out when he met with the Canadian Prime Minister. Why has the president changed his mind as it relates to this bridge?
I think the president was very clear and direct in his truth, John. But just to reiterate, the fact that Canada will control what crosses the Gordie Howe Bridge and owns the land on both sides is unacceptable to the president. It's also unacceptable that more of this bridge isn't being built with more American-made materials, even more so than what President Barack Obama committed to with the Canadians at the time, at the start of the project. He also believes that the U.S. should own at least half of the bridge, have shared authority over what passes across it, and participate in the economic benefits generated by its use. This is just another example of President Trump putting America's interests first. And so he made that very clear in his call with Prime Minister Carney earlier today. Phil.
Thank you, Caroline.
Sure.
DHS Secretary Kristi Noem just posted a photo of herself signing the last contract to build the border wall between Laredo, Del Rio, and Big Bend, Texas, among reports that construction had stalled. Is the president satisfied with the pace of construction?
The president wants to make sure that the full border wall is built as quickly as possible, of course. I know this is a priority for him dating back to 2016. And so absolutely, he wants to ensure that the border wall is built under budget and ahead of schedule is how President Trump likes to view building projects, and that includes the border wall.
The pace of construction thus far?
I think the president is never satisfied. He always wants to ensure that things are moving along as quickly as possible. But I know Secretary Noem is on it, and she's doing a great job. You're welcome. Sure, go ahead.
Thank you.
Charlie.
On the Nancy Guthrie case, is the president satisfied with the federal and local investigation so far? And has there been any more contact from the White House or the president with the family?
I don't think anybody will be satisfied until this case is brought to a close and until Nancy Guthrie is returned home safely with her loved ones.
Contacts? Has the president contacted the family since?
Not since that initial phone call. Sure. Tamara.
Thank you. The National Governors Association is removing a meeting with President Trump from his agenda because only Republicans were invited. Is the White House reconsidering inviting Democrats, or do you think Republicans are still going to show up? Like, where does that stand now?
No, look, I just spoke with the president about this. It is a dinner at the White House. It's the people's house. It's also the president's home. And so he can invite whomever he wants to dinners and events here at the White House. I believe Governor Moore was invited last year, and he did not show up to the dinner last year. Nobody reported on it. But again, the president has the discretion to invite whomever he wants to the White House, and he welcomes all those who received an invitation to come. And if they don't want to, that's their loss.
And on Ghislaine Maxwell, is the president going to rule out a pardon for her in her testimony deposition yesterday? Her legal team seemed to be making a case again for a pardon from the president.
Again, this is not something I've discussed with the president recently because, frankly, it's not a priority. He's focused on many of the issues that the American people are dealing with and providing solutions to those issues. So I haven't spoken with him recently. Last time we did speak about it, he said it's not something he's considering or thinking about. Go ahead, Bloomberg.
Thanks, Caroline. Secretary Litnick today was testifying on the Hill, and he said that he had visited Epstein's Island in 2012 with his wife and children. And that's after he said that he had cut ties with Epstein. And Justice Department documents show that he was in contact with Epstein through 2018 over messages. So does the White House stand behind Secretary Litnick right now? Or given what he has said today, has there been any shift in how the White House is viewing Secretary Lutnick's performance?
No, Secretary Lutnick remains a very important member of President Trump's team, and the president fully supports the secretary. I will just point out that there are a lot of wins in the news this week that people in this room have not asked about because you continue to ask questions about the same subject. So let me point them out for you. Again, on Friday, the Dow shattered 50,000 for the first time ever. This week, the American Society of Plastic Surgeons came out in opposition to gender mutilation surgeries for children. They are the first major medical group to do so. A federal appeals court today, nobody asked about that, just upheld the Trump administration's policy of detaining illegal aliens, validating the strong measures that have driven illegal crossings to historic lows, and sent a crystal clear message that under President Trump, if you enter the country illegally, you will be detained and removed. The murder rate, again, not a single question about this, has plunged to a 125-year low as crime falls across the board, thanks to President Trump's crime crackdown. We also saw this week national median rents have fallen to a 4-year low following 6 consecutive monthly declines, and mortgage affordability has surged to a 4-year high. Home ownership is the core foundation principle of the American dream. And I will repeat that mortgage affordability this week surged to a 4-year high, but not a single of mention of that in this briefing room today. And again, this came out last Friday, but for an unprecedented 9th straight month, there were 0 illegal border crossings at the southern border. So we're going to get back to business. The president is very busy today, and you will see him all tomorrow at the event in the East Room touting his administration's energy policy. Thank you.
Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have questions about the DOJ's release of the Epstein files. This, as Howard Lutnick testified on Capitol Hill earlier today about why he's mentioned in the documents. Fox News senior national correspondent Kevin Corke with this story.
I did not have any relationship with him. I barely had anything to do with that person.
Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick defending himself in a Senate hearing Tuesday, downplaying ties to the late accused sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. After the revelation, he had at least 2 meetings with him after Epstein's 2008 conviction on prostitution charges.
We had lunch on the island. That is true, for an hour.
Lutnick's testimony comes a day after Epstein's associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, repeatedly pleaded the Fifth in a deposition, though her attorney indicated she could talk if her 20-year prison sentence were to come to an end. The White House denied rumors President Trump could offer her a pardon.
It's not something he's considering or thinking about.
Meanwhile, lawmakers are accusing the Justice Department of making inappropriate redactions. Monday was the first day members of Congress could see unredacted versions of the more than 3 million pages of files that have been released.
There were 6 wealthy, powerful men that the DOJ hid for no apparent reason.
Nearly 2 months have passed since a deadline set by Congress for DOJ to release all of its files. So far, they've published about half.
DOJ is continuing to conceal and hide, and we need to counter it on behalf of the survivors.
I'm convinced the DOJ is complying with everything they're required to do.
Attorney General Pam Bondi will face questions on Wednesday from the House Judiciary Committee. In Washington, Kevin Corke, Fox News.
Okay, a lot of questions about Lutnick, about his past remarks, about his current remarks. If you want to watch more of Lutnick on Capitol Hill earlier today, by the way, you can go on our YouTube account. We have this posted. Let's bring in 24 Sight's Tom LoBianco. He's the editor and co-founder of 24 Sight News. Tom, Lutnick had more contact with Epstein than we thought. In fact, we heard him today acknowledge that he was on his private island. What does this mean for Lutnick's credibility?
Yeah, well, clearly there was a podcast. He talked about this last October when the debate was raging over whether or not this would actually happen. Now it is happening, and quite a tsunami in the midst of right now. And in that podcast, he said that he did not have further interactions after, I believe it was 2005. Now, of course, Epstein was first convicted. There's the plea deal, the light plea deal, in 2008. All right, so that's kind of our big benchmark there. That's our big date for. All right, did you talk to him? Were you friendly with him? As the emails show here, did you bring your family and kids to lunch with him before the child predator conviction, or afterwards? And here it is showing that Lutnick did this afterwards. Indeed, it was on the private Caribbean island. So that podcast where in October of last year, where he said that didn't happen, that is not true. I have to tell you, man, as scandals go, and I think maybe I've been doing politics too long, but whenever somebody opens, when somebody opens says, I did not have, I just instinctively hear Bill Clinton with his struggles of 30 years ago trying to explain away Lewinsky. In this modern environment that we live in, it almost seems that scandals don't matter, right? You could think of any number of scandals that get washed away. Well, this Epstein thing is huge and global, I would note too. Look at the number of European governments this thing is really racking right now, especially over in Britain. So it's just remarkable, the power of this thing.
Resignations happening over there. There's been calls for Lutnick to resign. I believe I saw Thomas Massie, who I suppose you could say wouldn't exactly be surprising for him to come out that way, but nonetheless, one Republican member of Congress calling for Lutnick's resignation. I have to emphasize the contact described in the files does not allege criminal wrongdoing by Lutnick. But Tom, how should the public interpret appearances in these documents?
Well, it's kind of a parlor game right now. I would note, actually, ironically, I had a friend send me one of my stories showed up in the Epstein files, an old AP story I wrote back in 2018 during the Russia probe, the Mueller probe. So there, one of my pieces of work actually is in there. It was sent by Jason Miller to Steve Bannon. So I guess I'll have to get that framed at some point. So that's the good way for it to happen. For most people, it's not good. And it is really astounding just how the level of surprises that we are finding out in this. This crowdsourcing of going through so many documents. It just continues to dominate the news cycle repeatedly. And I think what's interesting about Lutnick is, if you think about it, I've been covering Trump for 2026, so about 11 years now, since he came down the golden escalator back in 2015. If you think about this third iteration of Trump world, the second administration, the third campaign, the one that was successful in 2024, it was very interesting to see Lutnick ascend to a very prominent role inside of Trump world. Coming out of the November 24 election into the transition. Now, in just one of the people who's been hugely influential inside this administration. And I'll give a corollary here. Kristi Noem with the ICE shootings in Minneapolis. There was a lot of heat on Noem for quite a bit. I should note that in both cases, the president has said that he's not going to seek her resignation, nor, as we heard from Karoline Leavitt here today, nor is he would he seek Howard Lutnick's resignation. But fascinating to see the heat move on to somebody new. And you kind of have to wonder, well, what's going to be the next shoe to drop? I mean, we see Ro Khanna here. Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie just hugely impactful, along with Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene and everyone else who really led this effort to successfully push for the release of this files. who are the 6 people? I suspect, especially if it's Capitol Hill, where if anybody in Congress knows about this, I think we're going to find out at some point. So who knows? I have to tell you, I've been covering politics 25 years. I am flummoxed by the sweep and the power of this thing. It's hard to gauge something in the moment, but in terms of impact, I just keep thinking of things like the Pentagon Papers. It's just really remarkable, the impact of the Epstein files.
You know, as the story continues to develop, what are you watching for next from the White House, from Congress? My understanding is that a large portion of files still haven't been released.
Yeah, I think, it's been very fascinating to see the global journalism community, independent journalists, professional journalists, really working their way through this. Citizen journalist, social media, as pockmarked as it may be with the disinformation, is still, if you can navigate it safely, still a good avenue for finding these things. This crowdsourcing of the files has been really remarkable, and I don't know what to expect. I'm watching for, if we find out who these 6 unnamed individuals are that we recently found out about, from Ro Khanna, Thomas Massie, as you mentioned. I'm very interested in finding out who they are. I've been really shocked in terms of some of the overarching finds in here. The closeness of Steve Bannon with Epstein in 2018, 2017, 2018, really, back when Bannon was out in the wilderness, so to say. Good reminder there, of course, that if nobody ever truly leaves Trump's orbit, you can be exiled for a year or 2. I mean, old enough to remember when Corey Lewandowski was exiled back in 2021. And of course, now he's helping to run DHS and ICE and whatnot as the top advisor to Kristi Noem. So I've been very surprised at the sweep of these things, especially the Steve Bannon, Epstein relationship. I think we're still going to have a smattering of things. Lutnick's exposure in this is not nearly at that level of Bannon in this. I think we're going to keep on finding out more, really paying attention to whoever these 6 unidentified individuals are.
Always good to check in with you, Tom. By the way, how can people track 24 Sight's coverage?
Totally. Going over to 24sight.news. That's number 24sight.news. Right there. My beautiful Canva print. We have to get that in neon sometime. Got a big investigation into a church scandal out in Indiana, one of my favorite places to cover. So head on over there, check that out. Doing a lot of great work and help support independent journalism, guys.
Good to see you, Tom. Thanks.
Thanks, Austin.
You bet. All right, about 9:30 in the nation's capital. Let's hit a quick break. By the way, before we hit the break, let's actually play a moment from today's hearing. Senator Van Hollen of Maryland getting into it with Howard Lutnick. I'll just reiterate, this was during a subcommittee hearing of the Senate Appropriations Committee earlier today. Let's listen to a little bit of this.
You led people to believe that you had cut off all contact with Jeffrey Epstein after the 2005 encounter you and your wife had in his apartment. But as I'm sure you know, the Epstein files show a very different record of interaction. Why do the Epstein files show you coordinating a meeting and planning a visit with Jeffrey Epstein on his private island in December 2012?
Thank you for the question. I'm glad to be here to make it clear that I met Jeffrey Epstein when I moved to a house next door to him in New York, right? And I met him then. Over the next 14 years, I met him 2 other times that I can recall, 2 times. And that is none for 6 years. So 6 years later, I met him. And then a year and a half after that, I met him, and never again. Probably the total, and you've seen all of these documents, of these millions and millions of documents, there may be 10 emails connecting me with him, probably about 10 emails connecting me with him over a 14-year period. I did not have any relationship with him. I barely had anything to do with that person. Okay?
Secretary Lutnick, I think you understand the root of concern here. It's the way you described very emphatically your first encounter with him in his apartment, said you were disgusted, would never have any contact with him again. Did you in fact make the visit to Jeffrey Epstein's private island?
I did have lunch with him as I was on a boat going across on a family vacation. My wife was with me, as were my 4 children and nannies. I had another couple they were there as well with their children, and we had lunch on the island. That is true, for an hour, and we left with all of my children, with my nannies and my wife, all together. We were on family vacation. We were not apart. To suggest there was anything untoward about that in 2012, I don't recall why we did it, but
Mr. Secretary, again, as I said, there's not an indication that you yourself engaged in any wrongdoing with Jeffrey Epstein. It's the fact that you believe that you misled the country and the Congress based on your earlier statements, suggesting that you cut off all contact when in fact you had not.
Opposition. They aren't even hiding.
Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have questions. All right, you're watching live now. I'm Austin Westfall. Let's stick with this Nancy Guthrie story. We are hearing a person is being detained in custody for questioning. Guthrie herself has not been found. Fox News Digital's Michael Ruiz has been all over this. He's sent out a few tweets. Let's just go through some of what we know about this, and then we're going to be checking in with law enforcement expert Jamie Copenhaver momentarily here. So we will bring you a conversation with Jamie shortly here to talk about what this means. Here's what Michael knows so far. He says a law enforcement source tells me they have one person in custody but have not found Nancy Guthrie. So they have not found her. They're questioning this person regarding her disappearance. Michael Ruiz, by the way, is a reporter for Fox News Digital. He's well connected with this story. And by the way, a clarification here, not arrested, detained. That's how Michael puts it at this time. Unclear to us what the timeline is here, by the way. Not exactly sure, and I don't think I've seen other news outlets report when this detainment happened. And it's unclear to me exactly where they are in the process tonight. Is the questioning taking place as we speak? We will presumably wait to hear more from the Pima County Sheriff's Department as the night progresses, and then maybe early in the morning we'll hear something. In southern Arizona, a live look at the Guthrie home, the time approaching 8 p.m. in the Grand Canyon State. Let's just go through some of what we've learned today about this, because there's been a lot of major developments that have broke. A masked person was seen on these images. The first time we've seen a person. FBI releasing these images saying they have an individual that may be a person of interest. They are phrasing this very carefully, by the way, saying that they have an individual who may have a connection to the disappearance, but obviously we see this masked person with what appears to be a handgun holster walking up to the door. This Google Nest camera capturing this. The FBI saying that they were able to scrape this data despite the data being erased from the proper channels. So this video released today, these images released today. could see the suspect's eyes. Many of our analysts and experts have been on with us today saying that even though this person is covered up, they basically can get a decent amount of physical attributes. Obviously, the eyes. You might be able to discern the height, the gender. Images from about a little over a week ago, showing some of the blood staining the ground, staining the porch outside of the Guthrie residence. You know, I'm usually able to check in with our experts and analysts before we hit the air, but I just want to bring Jamie Copenhaver in right now. Jamie, we have you and your voice over the phone here. Jamie's a law enforcement expert. I just want to make sure you're connected with me, Jamie.
I am, Austin. Good to be with you.
It's good to be with you. Thanks for coming on. We are getting very preliminary information about a detainment being made. Michael Ruiz with Fox News Digital, making sure to distinguish between a person who has not been arrested. It appears that we have a person in custody. They're being questioned. Ruiz says detained, not arrested at this time. Jamie, what are you making of the breaking news tonight?
Certainly shows forward movement in the case that we've all been wanting, right? So great news. What stood out to me, Austin, was this purported $300 transaction of Bitcoin that may have been sent to the kidnappers. And then just a short time later, 3 to 4 hours later, we're seeing a person of interest being detained by the officials and law enforcement. So, you know, I truly think that was connected. And here we go. We have a person of interest detained. And that speaks volumes too.
Are you able to explain the difference between being detained and, well, being detained for questioning, the difference between that and being formally arrested?
Yeah, I mean, you know, if you detain someone against their will, you're taking their freedom, you're taking their movements away. So, you know, you're going to have some type of probable cause to say, hey, we're going to detain you. You're coming with us. It's not, will you come with us? You're detained. You're coming with us. The caveat to that is law enforcement is, you know, they're being very guarded with whatever they release to the public. This person is not named a person of interest. He's not named the suspect. And I think that's just good measurement by law enforcement, making sure they have the dots connected before they officially call anyone a suspect. So keep in mind, just, you know, it may be a person detained, but they're still not free to move, Austin. And you know, it wasn't, will you come with us? He's being detained. So that tells me they had enough probable cause, whatever the dots they've connected thus far, to get to where they're at to actually detain and temporarily suspend the movement of that person they have in custody.
Law enforcement expert Jamie Copenhaver joining us. I'm Austin Westfall. You know, this person is being questioned tonight. What legal thresholds typically do authorities need to have in order to bring somebody in for questioning?
And it's all going to come down to probable cause. We don't know if there were any type of search warrants that may have been executed on this individual prior to this individual being detained. But rest assured, I mean, you're not going to go out there on a flim-flam tip and detain someone to bring them back to headquarters or whatever office they're going to go and interview this individual. So it's a huge step to get to this. So I'm going to suggest that there's something pointing from law enforcement to this individual. You know, I keep coming back to that $300 purported transaction of Bitcoin. Was that connected? Did that connect a dot in order to get to this part of the investigation to bring a person against their will, basically, into headquarters for questioning? So I think it's a huge forward moment in the investigation, Austin. We just don't know all the details.
The last I saw, TMZ reported that there was activity in the Bitcoin account. TMZ, at least last I checked, was not saying the dollar amount, but a local Tucson affiliate, KGUN, did say that it was under $300 being moved in that Bitcoin account. Not a whole lot more context other than that, though. What do you make of $300? Because, you know, people track movements in Bitcoin accounts. They're probably either curious to know if this is a ransom money amount, or if this could be some sort of test. Sometimes people will put a small amount of money into a Bitcoin account to test to make sure that a transfer works. But $300 to me at least doesn't fit into either of those buckets.
No, it doesn't. And let's preface and make sure the viewers know we don't know the facts on the monetary amount of that exchange. So, we've heard rumors it was up to $300. So let's be clear on that. That's not factual. That's what we're hearing. In terms of that small amount, it's been purported, Austin, that they wanted around $6 million in ransom for the return of Nancy Guthrie. And then, we're hearing this lowball figure, perhaps under $300 that had been transmitted in exchange. You hit the nail right on the head. To me, that telegraphs and tells me it was some type of, not so much a test, but perhaps FBI may have planted a Trojan horse somewhere in that transaction that could reveal the location via IP address, and certainly defeat if they're using a VPN.
There's so many directions that we could take this conversation, especially since there's really only preliminary information known about this person that's been brought in for questioning. From your experience, does a detention for questioning signal a major break in a case, or can it simply be routine procedure?
I'm not going to call it routine. I've been on that side of the fence, and you have enough to go question someone. But here's the caveat, and they're key words. A person has been detained. And that's not our words, Austin. That's coming from purportedly law enforcement. So, to me, that signals it wasn't a voluntary, consensual interaction between this person and law enforcement. They went out. We're hearing rumors of a SWAT element in the area prior to that. So that signals and telegraphs to me they had something on the radar and enough probable cause to go out and bring that person in, detained, to hopefully ask more questions. The key factor is this: is the individual going to freely talk? Is he going to lawyer up? We haven't heard that, right? It's too early, but that's certainly a possibility in the realm of things as well.
I'll read a little bit of reporting from Fox News Digital. They say the FBI's elite hostage rescue team, they call it HRT, is in Tucson. This is the SWAT efforts that you're alluding to. Multiple news outlets have reported this, that HRT is in fact in the area. They are the FBI's premier tactical unit, and they get deployed in high risk and complex operations. This is the first time I've been on with you since the release of these images, Jamie. What was your reaction to seeing the masked person on this surveillance video?
Absolutely spooky, right? I mean, that was my jaw dropped. I was doing another station live on a Fox station and saw them for the first time, and I was like, oh, it was unbelievable. What that telegraphs to me is the person was certainly prepared, Austin. He had a thick layer, if not multiple layer of clothing on. More importantly, his face was concealed. You can see those two beady eyes illuminated from that Ring door camera. But more importantly, he had his hands covered with what I appear to be multiple layers of some type of maybe plastic or neoprene gloves to prevent any DNA escaping from those fingers and hands. So, not to mention the weapon he was carrying. But here's another telltale sign. The individual appeared to be wearing a backpack. And if you look at that backpack, it appeared to be somewhat full of items. We don't know what, we can speculate what items, but he certainly was prepared, in my opinion, for the heinous crimes that he was getting ready to commit.
We're looking at the video right now. At one point, the person uses a plant to try and obscure the view of the camera. And you're right. A lot of people are making the point that you can see the eyes clearly. Of course, much of this person is covered. You can't see a whole lot. But what can you discern from somebody that's covered up like this? What physical attributes can you gain from something?
The digital team at the FBI is going to go and take that image and those still images and video, and they're going to import that, if you will, in some tools that they have. They're going to be able to determine almost to the centimeter of how tall this individual is, his weight. Given the fact that he's wearing multiple layers of clothes, I'm pretty sure the tools can detect that clothing and give an approximate weight. More importantly, to the average person looking at this, you only see the two eyeballs, right? But there is some software, some tools that they can perhaps enhance that and perhaps give a facial structure based on what they see of the bridge of the nose through the mask, and also the width of the eyes that we can see clearly. So I am 100% confident that the digital team at FBI is all over this. And I think we'll see some considerable headway and announcements coming very soon from FBI and local law enforcement on the identity of the suspect.
It was reported today that investigators were taking swabs from people who work at the home, people like landscapers, pool cleaners, things of that nature. If they're doing things like that, does that tell us that there's a chance or a likelihood that they have unidentified DNA that they've been able to take from the crime scene?
You know, it would speak both ways, Austin. And what I'd want to believe is, you know, on any of these cases, unfortunately, you're going to look at family, you're going to look at close associates, and you're certainly going to look at service providers such as gardeners, pool people, et cetera. But what you want to do is take DNA swabs of all of the above, right? And what you're looking to do is clear people from the pool of suspects or persons that they suspect. So, you know, don't look at that DNA swabbing of those service people as a guilt. They're perhaps looking to clear those people to get them out of the way so they can move forward looking for the real intruder in this case.
Yeah, I guess that was the point I was trying to make. Not so much on the people that are being swabbed, but if they're taking DNA from people in and around the house, does that mean that they're trying to eliminate people because they have found unidentified DNA somewhere around or in the residence?
Absolutely. All of the above. You don't know who's responsible. This is a unsub, right? So you have to do exactly what we're seeing play out to not only clear people, but you may get a hit on someone that you're taking a DNA swab or a sample from. Equally as important, I mean, we've seen crime scene and FBI agents back out at Annie Guthrie's house on multiple trips. So, you know, we don't know exactly what those trips are about, but we know that photographs were taken purportedly in the garage in other rooms of that house. So, you know, they're just making sure they don't leave anything behind in terms of anything potential as far as DNA or any other science. You know, I don't read a lot into the Annie Guthrie house a lot. You know, it's trending that they were there multiple times. Perhaps they're looking for additional DNA items to clear everyone that had contact with Nancy that day from the family aspect. So it's just it's so fluid in motion. And unfortunately, it's unforgiving, but the FBI has to do what they're doing in order to move the case forward to make an arrest.
It was reported that authorities were going door to door in the Guthrie neighborhood today. You know, some of the people in the newsroom had this question. I'm assuming many people at home might have this question. Wouldn't they have already done door-to-door knocking earlier on in the investigation? We're, you know, almost a week and a half into this thing at this point. What more could they be doing going door to door?
You know, they could be looking for any cameras that may have been in a car or a vehicle. People may have not been home during that original canvass. More importantly, maybe they have connected a dot that led them back to that neighborhood. And, you know, perhaps, and I'm speculating, Austin, maybe something happened previous to the kidnapping of Nancy Guthrie, and they're trying to see if there are any cars in the neighborhood that may have matched up with possibly an eyewitness, right? That may have seen a car in the area of Nancy Guthrie leading up to her kidnapping. There's just so much speculation as to why they've been out there multiple times. You know, as you guys reported yesterday, they were sifting and digging around in manhole covers. So I truly want to believe, and I have 100% confidence in the FBI, they're literally leaving no stone unturned, and they're making multiple trips to make sure that all the dots are connected and they're not missing anything on these canvases of the neighborhood.
Yeah, we had the drone above the house on Sunday. These images are from Sunday, but we've been seeing, I mean, this type of activity has been happening basically every day since Guthrie disappeared. You know, Jamie, given what we've seen so far, these new images being released, we've now seen the passing of 2 reported ransom deadlines. There's been a reward announced. An imposter was arrested, among other things. What's the biggest misconception that you think the public has about how cases like this actually get solved?
Great question, Austin. We all sit back and watch these crime shows while eating dinner or having popcorn or what have you. And, you know, these crime shows, the crime gets solved in 45 minutes minus the commercials. And it's not real life. It doesn't happen that way. It takes time to build the evidence in a case. And, you know, we're seeing this play out. We're all on the edges of our seat. We all want Nancy returned, but unfortunately, it takes time to build a case. You know, they have DNA and biological and other samples that are perhaps pending at the lab level that haven't came back yet. So, you know, law enforcement, in my opinion, I think they're being very, very measured in terms of what they're releasing to the public versus what they're not releasing, because, you know, you don't want to speed up law enforcement and they miss something by pressure. So I think they're being very measured in terms of keeping stuff from us as much as they are giving us little bits and pieces. So, you know, my hat's off to the sheriff out there. I think he's done an amazing job. You know, he himself said he released the crime scene a little bit too early. But let me tell you something, the sheriff owned that and said if he had it to do over, he wouldn't have done that. So, you know, we must, as the public, assist law enforcement, but we also need to give them some credit as this case progresses.
You know, we here at Live Now and so many other news outlets have had this phone number on their screen for the majority of the week and longer than a week at this point. 1-800-CALL-FBI, that's the tip line. You got to imagine a ton of information is coming into that tip line. How do authorities typically sift through what's helpful and what's not helpful if they have a large amount of data coming their way?
And they do. You're right on point. It's been suggested that they're getting between 75 and 85,000 tips per day. And, you know, the painstaking misery of not only personnel from FBI, but the help of software. You have to vet and go through every single one of those tips, because guess what? If you miss one, Austin, or if you kind of like, okay, well, this maybe not, it doesn't mean anything, it doesn't make sense, and you throw that tip aside, Austin, that could be the tip that breaks the entire case. So, you know, it's painstaking. You know, I always like to give credit to the analysts that are there in Quantico and other hidden places going through these tips tirelessly. They don't get the credit, right? But they're solving a lot of these crimes. And, you know, the tips are so valuable to any case. And as this, you know, as this plays out, I can assure you there are going to be tips that came in to that 800 FBI number that helped law enforcement connect the dots. You know, the billboards that are going up are amazing, but you have to have the personnel to filter through every one of those tips that come in. And, you know, a lot of them can be debunked and set aside, but unfortunately, you have to go through and read and go through every tip. Here's the other caveat to that. Once that tip is triaged and deemed to be credible as a real tip, then you're going to have to send a law enforcement officer out to the area where that tip originated from to make contact if the availability is there with the tipster to learn more information. So it's a fluid, I call it organized chaos. But the FBI is well versed on how to do this, and we're seeing it play out before our eyes on what they're capable of doing. And it's simply amazing, I think.
The Guthrie home, live on our screen right now, just past 8:15 Mountain Standard Time in Arizona. For those just tuning in, this is the news of the night. Getting breaking news from Fox News Digital saying that they have detained one person for questioning in relation to the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. Michael Ruiz making the point that this is not an arrest. This is a detainment and a questioning at this time, and Guthrie herself has not been found. Two sources telling Fox News Digital that a person has been detained for questioning in connection to the disappearance. That's all we know for now. Fox News confirming the very same thing. Jamie, before we let you go here, what are the most important things you're listening for, you're watching for in the next 24 to 48 hours?
What I want to see, Austin, is a presser held by the sheriff and the FBI. You know, they're going to have some type of momentum forward movement on this case as they progress with this person of interest or the detainee, right? So I will be looking for a press conference, hopefully sometime tomorrow, to let us know what those results yielded in terms of this person they're detaining currently. And, you know, the bigger question is, are they going to release any type of sketches of this mystery man wearing the mask at Nancy Guthrie's front door? We know that they potentially have the tools to come up with a sketch. I would be looking for that in the next day also if they don't solve it with the person they have detained.
Jamie, can't thank you enough for the time tonight. Jamie Copenhaver is a former sheriff's detective and investigator. He's also a law enforcement expert. Thanks.
All right, it's 9 p.m. on the East Coast, 6 p.m. on the West Coast, 7 p.m. in Pena County, Arizona. We have breaking news tonight. There are multiple big breaks in this case, including bombshell new video from the FBI. We'll have more on that in a moment with Kash Patel, the FBI director. Also tonight, major law enforcement activity now underway. 2 armored SWAT vehicles departed a Pima County Sheriff's parking lot, along with a local bomb squad. That was just a few hours ago. And moments ago, the bomb squad did return, according to reports from the ground. This activity is somehow related to the search for Nancy Guthrie. Meanwhile, Harvey Leavitt, who will join us in less than a minute, he is reporting activity for the very first time on the Bitcoin account linked to the initial ransom demand earlier today. Well, this nightmare finally came to life. They had their first break in the case, a haunting image that will send chills down your spine. The FBI successfully recovered this video from Nancy Guthrie's doorbell camera. It shows a menacing suspect at Nancy Guthrie's front door wearing a ski mask, gloves, backpack, appears to be holstering a gun in the front of his pants. If you take a close look, because the Guthrie family and the FBI are now asking once again the public for any and all help in identifying this person that we will be putting up throughout the hour. Savannah Guthrie posted this on Instagram with the caption, quote, "We believe she is still alive. Bring her home." So again, take a very close look. What do you see in these images? Do you recognize the face there? And what about the clothes? If this person looks familiar to you, possibly familiar, please contact the FBI or the Pima County Sheriff's Department. Again, the FBI Director Kash Patel will join us in a moment. First, joining us now on all of tonight's breaking news, TMZ founder, friend of the program, our friend Harvey Leavitt is with us. He's done great work here. Okay, you've been following from the initial ransom letter that you received at TMZ. You had been following this Bitcoin account. Okay, we got the first hit of activity about, I saw on your website, about 4:30, 4:35 today, correct?
It was just before 4 o'clock LA time, 7 o'clock Eastern time. There was activity for the first time, Sean, in that Bitcoin account, the link of which is in that first ransom letter that we obtained. We've been checking it every few minutes, and for the first time it surfaced.
It seems like whoever this person is that sent you and TMZ that letter had been very careful up to this point. Now, KGUN Channel 9 out in Tucson is also confirming the activity in the account. They say the activity is less than $300. Can you confirm that?
So there are reasons that I have been careful with my words, and it obviously has to do with sourcing, and I am just not at liberty to talk about amounts right now, Sean. I just, this is a complicated case, and we gave our word on something, and we're going to stick by that.
I totally respect that, and we don't want to do anything that's going to hurt the investigation or this case in any way. Okay, let's look at this development today. I think it's the biggest break, the only break we've really had since this began 10 days ago. When you look at that footage, what do you see? What are you looking at? And when you put it together with things that only you know because you got the original ransom letter, what do you put together?
Well, it's a little bit confusing to me, and I'll explain why. This letter, Sean, is so well constructed. I read it and think this is a really intelligent person who knows how to express a thought. They have thought this out. They are to the point. They cover everything they need to cover. And then you look at this, and there's something bumbling about it, where the person who is shown right there took enough care to completely cover himself, except for seeing a mustache and either a goatee or a beard. And yet he doesn't realize that there's a camera on that door. and that suddenly surprises him enough that he has to go over, stoop down, and grab some brush to try and cover the camera. That doesn't align to me with somebody as methodical as what I believe the person who wrote that note. I will tell you a couple of other things that our sources who are directly involved in this investigation tell us that this was not video that was withheld. The authorities received it today and they released it almost immediately. We also know that the authorities are working under the operative theory is that whoever did this lives in the Tucson television area. That one of the big reasons authorities believe this is something we've talked about, which is that they sent the ransom letters, both the first and the second, to one or two of the television stations in Tucson, as opposed to sending it, say, to NBC, which is Savannah Guthrie's employer. So they feel there's a connection there. And also in that first ransom letter, it says, we will bring her back to Tucson within 12 hours of receiving payment. That's about a 700-mile radius if you think the car would go 60 miles an hour. But authorities, we're told, and by people involved in this, believe this is somebody in that area around the Tucson television area.
So if the person in that video, and when you put together the video and what we're seeing, the images we're seeing with the letter that you put eyeballs on, and it doesn't really align with the sophistication of that letter. I've got to imagine it wouldn't align with a theory that it's somebody that knows Nancy Guthrie well, because if they did, they would have known that camera's there, if in fact they really are surprised by the camera, no?
I mean, I think that's a really good point, that if this was somebody who cased Nancy's house, I would think one of the first things they would see is, and look for, is some sort of a camera on that door. So look, I talked to one person involved in this case today, and I raised exactly that point. And the response I get back was, you cannot always use logic and reason in figuring things like this out. And I think that's true, that, you know, in some ways, you know, you're guilty of overanalyzing sometimes when you expect everybody to make the precise, rational move. And that just isn't always the case. So I can't explain that, Sean. You know, it does speak to somebody who didn't know that door before coming there in the first instance. But again, even if you don't know the door, everybody knows it's common to have those cameras. And if you take the time to completely cover yourself, with the exception of a little bit of a beard and a mustache, then wouldn't you think through, gee, there might be a doorbell there too? And at least when you walk up to the door, you have something in your hand to cover it with, as opposed to being surprised by it and then walking back to the garden area and grabbing some brush.
Harvey, it's obvious you're working very closely with law enforcement and have been from day one. And by the way, I totally admire your help, your cooperation. I'm grateful for it. I think most Americans are as well. And keeping their confidence and not giving out specific details. Last exit question, and you don't really even have to answer it. Are there things that maybe you now know that give you more confidence that we're getting close here to finding this person that you may not be able to talk about publicly?
Yeah, I mean, there is activity, much more activity than there was a couple of days ago. It seemed like authorities were stalled until really today. And a lot is going on. As you said, we are told the same thing, that these SWAT and bomb squad movements relate specifically to the Nancy Guthrie case. Whether they are close to figuring it out, I think that there are things that law enforcement is doing right now that are not surefire things to find the person, but they have a plan, I think.
Okay. Harvey Levin, you had phenomenal coverage. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing everything with our audience. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page.
Might not be seen.
How's Scotty? How's our signal? Is it pretty strong? Are you taking hits? It's pretty strong. I've got too many people talking to me at once. What's that? One more time, guys. What would you like? I mean, you tell me what. Okay, you've got the pictures already. You can show the pictures just briefly afterwards if you want.
Went in. Okay, they went in. You can see them inside though, but all right, they went in there. Let's go out here and wait. And then there's a secondary.
What does that truck that says MS on it mean? Is that local? I don't think they would label it, but I think it's medical examiner truck.
I'm Robert.
Hi, nice to meet you. Paris with 13 News.
Oh, nice to meet you.
CBS and Fox affiliate.
Nice to meet you. That's great. I'm with NBC LA.
Yeah.
Okay, they're coming up. What do you have? Are they there? There's someone there. You see that they're around here? They just want to plug this one. Does that come up there? You can see a little bit. Yeah. FBI told NBC News that all of these searches in the homes of the Guthries, Nancy and daughter Annie, they live about 4 miles apart, were done with consent of the family. Those homes, again, empty. But this afternoon, after the release of those images by Kash Patel, the FBI director, the FBI has been fanned out across this neighborhood near where Annie Guthrie lives. We're showing you this house here because a couple of FBI agents just went in and are talking to the people there. But let's show you some video. This is this afternoon. We're trying to see that these FBI agents are going just about everywhere in the backyards, emitting great fires. Why is this relevant? What exactly are they looking for? Yesterday, she said they asked her for additional video. He showed we have a video. He said they asked him specifically for a midnight timestamp. Again, Nancy Guthrie was last seen with her family dropped off at 9:30 on Saturday night. The family was missing at noon on Sunday when she failed to join friends to watch church services online. So you have then a basic 12-hour window then in which you fill in the blanks, look at these images, they believe this individual may possibly be responsible. All of these things put into the possible. We're not going to speculate, Colleen and Michael, because the FBI has even told us they haven't been able to verify any of these supposed reported ransom notes. So they don't know if those are legitimate. They don't know if she was in fact taken against her will. But the images today of an individual showing up outside of the home of Nancy Guthrie, certainly terrifying, giving everyone pause, and now having the FBI speak out directly across the country, now including President Trump, asking for everyone to take a look at those images, and if they recognize this person, to please come forward. It was the FBI that told NBC News last night that there has been no communication with the possible abductor of Nancy Guthrie and the family. And it was the FBI who said last night that they are working round the clock 24/7. But at that point, there was no individuals. Well, now we have somebody that they're looking for because as you look at that video, he sort of, or she sort of manipulated or perhaps took the doorbell off. And so that's why it took a long time to try and finally scour the internet and the servers for them to be able to release those images. And as we sit here and we wait and we take a look, down the street right here, and we can just show you, this is how spread out these homes are. And this is how difficult it is when you think about it to access this area in the dark. What do you want to notice here? You don't have any street. Very dark street. And it's even darker over at Nancy Guthrie. So it's a 50-year-old neighborhood that we have in this town.
Hey, you guys. I wasn't really showing y'all that for the audio. I was showing you guys what is going on with her. I pray that she's okay, but let's face it, it's not really looking good. It's not looking good. It's crazy, this whole thing that's happening. Oh, y'all, it's like almost 3 o'clock in the morning, but let me say this. This case is so layered. I don't know what to think. I don't know what to believe. Here's my thought. Now, I do hope that she's found alive, but is it hopeful? No. Dr. Mahan, is it hopeful? No. Because I would worry that the kidnappers would worry about her getting caught. Oh, I wanted to show you guys one thing before I got out of here. Can I show you a quick clip before I go? Because I'm following Kamala. I don't even know why I'm asking. Let me find this clip for you guys. I still believe it's finished by the day. God, it's bad. I believe it's a family member. All right, you guys, it's a short clip. I'm like cross-eyed right now talking to you guys. Y'all doing okay? Thank y'all for hanging out with me. My mods hold me down. Okay, let me find this clip and I'll shut up. Okay, wait a minute. Hey, Damage Inc. I want to just show it to you guys real quick because you see what I'm talking about. Let me go. Wait, I think I gotta reshare my screen. I did something wrong, I think. All right, hopefully you guys can see it.
All right, now, did warning signs, were they ignored? Actress Rosie Perez saying that she predicted the former VP Kamala Harris would not have a chance, that she would lose the 2024 race, but said no one listened when reflecting on the campaign. No one listened to her. It was that simple.
When I was on the campaign for Kamala, which was, I'm just going to be honest, it wasn't a good campaign. And I told you that. And nobody wanted to hear from me. Remember I said, she's going to lose. Nobody cared about social issues or anything like that. They were struggling and they wanted something to change on that level. That was it. That was it. And it blew my mind that so many people were on the same page, regardless of party.
All right, Kaylee McEnany here to run this one up the tree. How you doing?
Hey,
Good
I'm doing
morning.
good. How are you?
Everyone's a winner now, aren't they? Everyone
knew it. Yes.
I told you, you didn't listen to me.
Yes, she said she's even gotten some apologies. So I suppose good for her. And she said that the thing she kept hearing from various people across the aisle was it's the economy, focus on the economy. So wise, sage, old political advice that held true. One thing she said that was interesting, though, is the Kamala case was very bad. And I heard that this weekend on Saturday in America when I interviewed Andrew Yang. And Andrew Yang said, I had said, Joe Biden, it's time to move aside, put Kamala here. And then all of a sudden he's blacklisted when Kamala's campaign gets up and running because he was too critical of Joe Biden. So the fact that Kamala's campaign was blacklisting people who were critical of Joe Biden, they couldn't read the tea leaves.
It reminds me of way back when the late Bob Beckel was on the 5 and it was 2012 election. And on the Friday night before the election, Bob Beckel took me aside and he said, Dana, Romney is not going to win. And I was so mad at him. I was mad at him Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Tuesday, we're on set together in this room, in this studio. And I'll never forget, that race was called so early. Do you remember? And I said, Bob, I'm so embarrassed. And he goes, well, it's not as bad as losing 49 states. Don't worry about it. But a lot of people can pick up on things. And if you don't want to hear it, you can ignore it. And that was part of the thing. Kamala Harris also has this big reboot of Kamala HQ is now headquarters, which is getting some pushback. Here is not the answer for Democrats on MS Now, saying that the launch felt like another splashy consultant-serving, donor-driven project that sidesteps the real work the left needs to do to win back younger voters. This is interesting because I do think that a lot of this is consultant-driven. They're like, we got to keep justifying our existence, and they don't come up with anything new.
Yeah, this is just pandering. I mean, you think you're going to get young people by naming something headquarters and putting the number 67 in there, which they've now removed. No, that's not going to work.
They removed that?
They removed it. And exactly. So I know a lot of people in the influencer community, the digital space on the Republican side, they have mastered this, how to use the internet. You have to know the algorithms. There's a science to it. And I'm sure the left has people like that. Maybe she has some people like that. But I could tell you that the people I know would say the first rule of this is we need a candidate that we can sell. We need a candidate that's authentic. She is simply unable to be authentic. We saw that in the Call Her Daddy podcast. She doesn't land those moments. She's not just real.
Do you think Rosie Perez thinks she can't win in 2028?
We're going to have to ask her.
We'll have to ask her. Maybe she
I told you
knows.
so. Listen, here's what I think right now. What's shaping up, I don't know who the viable candidate is right now. I think it's difficult for any of us to say, but whether it's South Carolina, Nevada, Iowa, New Hampshire, there's going to be a real race on the Democratic side to try and determine who that nominee is going to be, and we're going to be there for it. Meanwhile, ladies, you guys are in comms, right? Your communications. Here we go. The number of times that Donald Trump, as president in his current term, has had interactions with the press is already twice as much as it was in this point in Trump 1.0. Kaylee, what's that tell you?
He's averaging 2 press events per day. And he has mastered the ability not to be a part of the news cycle. I mean, he essentially is the news cycle. And these events, this access is key to mastering that. But I will say this, the one thing Republicans need to work on is now you've mastered owning the news cycle, you've got the messenger, you've got President Trump, but how do you make the subject matter affordability? How do you make the subject matter Trump accounts? How do you master being the news cycle, but putting these front and
Well,
center?
that also, though, depends on him helping them do that.
Very true.
Because, when you have 25 news stories a day coming from the White House, it's hard to focus.
Very true.
All right. Great to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
And if you want any more, Perino on Politics is out. And this week I sat with Trey Gowdy, and it's available for download wherever you listen to podcasts.
Okay. So I find it interesting that Kamala is by K. She's really gonna. I feel that she's gonna try to run for 2028. She's been hinting at it. She's been hinting it. I wouldn't be surprised, but do you guys think that's gonna happen? I think they're gonna put through Newsom. Unfortunately, right? But we'll see what's gonna happen. Now, okay, so a quick recap. I played Karoline Leavitt. She's been speaking about different things. Of course, she was speaking about Uncle Paul. She's speaking about Nancy Guthrie. I don't feel it looks good, right? It's a wealthy family. They were asking for $4 million, now they're asking for $6 million. That case is layered. I don't do conspiracies, right? Did you guys hear that they're saying that there's some connection to Epstein with the mom? I haven't seen anything like that. So I don't play stuff like that until there's enough stuff out. I don't know. Then, of course, you have the Epstein files. That is layered. I have to do a whole stream on that in itself. There's a lot of hearings. That's global. That's a lot, and that's a lot to go through. I don't know if you guys have been keeping up with it or not. Donald Trump, I find it surprising that people don't come in here talking about my hair. Nope, don't need it. Don't talk about me. You guys just remove those comments when they talk about my, not in the mood tonight. But listen. Or you could talk about, or you could block them. I don't care. I don't care what you guys do tonight. The mom was a victim. She's a victim. Let me go ahead and get you up out of here because I don't even like your emoji. Okay, I got you. Listen, how come nobody's talking about these Trump accounts? We keep talking about the kids. Nobody's talking about this. No other president has done this. Your kid is born or your kid is under 10, $1,000 goes into the account. And that account gets interest by the child. By the time that child is 18, they can even keep investing as the child becomes an adult. Leave it into the account, and they'll have a substantial amount of wealth. That is a game changer. Kids that wouldn't have Dr. Bad, I don't care about stuff like that. But I don't care about stuff like that. But thank you. That's a game changer. I don't hear anybody talking about it. I feel like this. Had it been a Democratic president saying, hey, I'm going to put $1,000 in kids' accounts, they'll be praising it. And when it comes to politics, we have to get over this right versus left and just think of it as like what's right, what's wrong, what's better for the country. I think we all want to see our kids taken care of and generational wealth because that's what we're talking about. And kids that wouldn't have, thank you, Dr. Mahan, kids that wouldn't have opportunities. It's just a big deal. So I'll keep talking about the Trump accounts. If no one else does, I'll talk about it because I'm really excited about that. I don't have any kids that qualify, but a wealthier nation is better for America all around. Okay. Now let me see what you guys are saying. I think it'll be Gavin too. The Democratic Party is toast if they're still trying. Now, I don't think she's going to have a strong enough. I don't think she's going to. Uncle Claude, we'll see. But I'm not going to bet on Miss Harris. They didn't choose her. I mean, I think that Newsom is going to be who they push through. Both halftime shows suck. You didn't like the halftime show at Turning Point? Bad Bunny's show was Crowning Ritual with Lady Gaga. You know, I'm part Puerto Rican, so I got, you know, I understand both sides of it. It was a ritual for bad, but you know, hey, it's all entertainment. I'm not gonna be biased because you know, it is what it is. Newsom versus Vance is gonna be good. I live in California. I can't go for Newsom. Oh, thank you, Watchman. I can't go for Newsom because Newsom has done so much damage to California. Okay? Even if Newsom was a Republican, I wouldn't vote for him. I wouldn't vote for him. I just can't. He's done so much damage. Look at what happened with the wildfires. We couldn't put out put out the fires because of water and other stuff. Newsom's just done a lot. I can get into the finances. I can get into so many things, but I won't get into that tonight. Newsom against Vance would be one to watch. That's what I'll say. Obviously, the Democrats and the liberals are going to go for Newsom. Okay, he's going to promise a lot of things that he can't deliver on. And JD Vance, well, JD Vance would be a fine candidate. He did an excellent job at the vice presidential debate, and it would be interesting to see somebody his age in office. Okay. They're not going to put her in the seat. What else you guys? Newsom has a snake tongue. I hate Newsom, but he can talk. I don't like Newsom. We can get into his finances. We can get into a lot of things with Newsom, you guys. Maybe I'll do that on a horizontal stream if we break down these candidates. Okay. I like my horizontal streams because you guys can actually join the conversation and it's not as busy over there. But I would like to break down these candidates, you guys, as we get closer. Let's get through midterm elections first. A lot of the politics can talk, but can they walk? Good one. Vance will mop the floor with Newsom. I think so, damage. Vance is an aunt, says you. And left or right doesn't matter. These people with high power sacrifice kids. We shouldn't be so divided. We can get into that BS high speed. Wow. Dr. Manhattan just be writing with me. Vance would have been a better president than Trump, but Republicans needed Trump to open the door for him. We needed Trump. Trump takes a hard stance on the border. The Trump accounts are good. Trump RX is good. There's a lot of good things that Trump is doing. Okay. Maduro, if they can work out these negotiations with Greenland, right? That would be awesome. Trump is doing a lot of things. Don't sleep on Donald Trump. He's only been in office for a year and he's already made significant progress in this country. How you doing, Reverend? Don't sleep on him. And Vance is going to be the new president for the new world order. I pray for this country every night. I pray that people will stop this nonsense, stop doing things that goes against our country. And I don't see this in other countries. I mean, I love this country so much. I won't have signs, you guys. Some of the things that they're doing at the Olympics, it's just like, why? If you don't love America, I think that says more about you than it does. You have Americans saying that they don't like America, but people are fighting to come here. People are fighting to be a part of our country. We just ask that you come the right way. We don't want to keep people out. We want people to come the right way, so that way it keeps the country safe. It protects our country and American citizens and other citizens, right? That's all you ask for. But when you see signs and people saying, I'm sorry for America, you're sorry for a country that gives people opportunity. This is still a land of opportunity. You can make it here if you want to. Maduro, try it. Next month, and your videos are going to be gold. I'm going to follow it, Dr. Manhattan. You know, I am so invested. Hopefully, I can do you guys justice with my non-biased commentary. But no, seriously, the Maduro trial is so controversial. I'm gonna be up. I'm gonna have to give you guys probably a couple, at least 2 streams and 3 on a weekend to cover all these trials, you guys, and recap them for you and try to make them short enough so you guys can get all of it without having to sit through hours and hours of commentary. I watch so much commentary to find things that's not edited, find the actual source, and give it to you all in one. Okay. So the hours that I spend, you guys don't have to watch it for hours. We needed Trump, and we need all of these people that oppose him to get out of the way. Their stats are evil by the way they act and support horrid issues. That's true damage. That's true. Hey, Kevin. Greenland isn't going to give up any land anytime soon since their own people know that their land was stolen. Plans they get, okay, Sturdy. Okay. People said get out of the way until policies start affecting them in a negative way. Okay, Sebastian, I hear you. People say get out of the way so other people don't get hurt. So that way the ICE investigators can do their job peacefully, in a peaceful manner. It protects the ICE agent and it protects the protesters. Well, I guess you're right about Trump being in office. What do you mean, Jermaine? What did I say about Trump being in office? Bush says, I support, oh my goodness. Mike says, I support ICE. Okay. I support the law and the Constitution. Okay. I disagree. It's not following blindly. I don't support the attack on our children. I must have missed something in the chat. What policies are you talking about? I spoke about quite a few policies, Joe Comment. You'd have to ask me one in particular, but I spoke about different policies, okay? Entering the country the right way, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We shouldn't protect ICE agents. Why not? We should protect anyone that's upholding the law. And if somebody's not upholding the law, then they need to be held accountable. Trump was mentioned in the Epstein trials. I talked about the Epstein trials earlier. 30,000 times. That's who. I didn't hear that count at all. You guys have any final thoughts? Listen, thank you. Being more. Ooh, I got the hiccups all of a sudden. In regards to being mentioned in the files, we need actual content for that. Donald Trump was not mentioned in those trials 30,000 times. Hi, Catwalk. Good morning. How are you this morning? Jermaine says, I don't support ICE because they shouldn't be here in our cities. Then how would you propose, what do you suggest they do? Do we allow people to cross the border any kind of way? I'm just asking a question. Do we allow people just to come over here and do what they want to do and no one has to uphold the law? So what do you propose? ICE has been in your cities for decades. Yeah, Sebastian, I agree with that too. The melting pot is full. Not the melting pot is full. I just know that we need so much here. We need so much here. I live in California, right? California, where I live in is pretty expensive. California is the affordable healthcare. We need to be able to buy groceries and take care of our families. When you go to the emergency room, who do you think is mostly there and who do you think pays for it? None of this stuff is free that people like to talk about, okay? The money comes from somewhere. ISIS crossing the borders. Come here the legal way as every other country. Leave California. Why would I leave California? I love California. Are you okay? I I would not leave California. I mean, it's okay. Mm. You just said it's expensive. I said it's expensive. That don't mean I want to leave. I make my living here. I'm a California girl. Well, I'm a Midwestern girl, but no, we're not leaving California. Damn girl, you in the trenches living in Cali as a Republican. I know, Sebastian. I know, but because I go to the protests, the film, right? So I go to the No Kings protest. I went to the Trump rally, of course. Yeah, but I mostly just go to film. I don't go out expressing my views. I do what I do with you guys. I just talk to people. I really keep my opinions to myself. Now I will tell y'all some facts, but I live in a very liberal state. I live in a very liberal state. You guys know that, but no, I cannot come out here and just say, yeah, I'm Republican. I'll lose my job. I can't do that. I blended. If you're liberal, I'm quite. Just give me an interview and we can talk about our differences and talk about it. I think that people need to relax a little bit. And here, it's hard to have conversations. We're not really listening to each other. We're just trying to prove our point. When we talk about people coming into this country the right way, we're not telling people not to come in, right? And when you think of other countries and how they protect their borders and national security, we have to have that in the United States as well. That's why a lot of Democrats also voted for Donald Trump. Democrats, don't say you didn't vote for Donald Trump as a Democrat because he cannot have won the popular vote if you did not. Let's face it, people wanted Donald Trump to come into the office because they wanted change. Now change is here and people are crying about it. No. Sometimes change doesn't feel good because it's like, oh, what's happening? But just like I have to tell my child sometimes, I just have them do stuff and then later my child understands once things are done. I'm not calling you guys children. I'm just saying that change can be scary because we get comfortable, even though we voted for this. In the long run, we'll see that this is what our country needed. This is what our country needed. A boost in morale, a sense of security, a sense that we could take care of our family and our kids. This is what we needed. And it's here. And I'm happy for it. I am. I feel safer. I feel like let me tell you something. We live in a country that honestly, no matter who the president is, you can make it. No excuses. You can do it. I don't approach women because I'm black. My dark skin offends women. What does that have to do with anything? Mercy. What does that have to do with anything? You're probably not black, saying I don't understand why you put that in my chat. You and me need to meet each other one day, come to Columbus, Ohio. Okay, I see you guys are off subject, so I'm not going to read all that. It's nice to see a good woman. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I just hope the next president is able to galvanize the country and bring it together. But we have to bring it together. The president, look at what Donald Trump is doing. So we as a people need to come together because we're the ones that's dividing it. The country is divided by calling Republicans fascists, racist, saying that we're doing things against the country. That's making people hate the political right by spreading these vicious lies against the political right. That's what's dividing the country. Stop demonizing the Republican Party. Stop making it seem as if we don't have a right to speak our mind. Stop making it seem like everybody has to be so tense and so careful about what they say. We have this cancel culture so bad that has a lot to do with the internet. But we divide this country. You guys can disagree with me. Can I answer your question? I just scroll. If I catch a question, I catch the question. You can put it back in the chat. I don't see a question. Am I agency? I don't see a question. V. So you guys, I'm assuming I got my in the chat that could remove these comments for me. So that's what I'm gonna say about that. If you want the country, it's okay if my mod's blocked instead of timeout. It's if you want the country together, then that's going to be for the people to do. And have these conversations in a mature way. But once you start resorting to name calling, once you start resorting to, oh, this person's evil and everything I do is right, no, then we're not going to get anywhere. So once we get over that, because let me tell you something, Congress is full of Democrats and Republicans. They're at the meetings, they have conversations, they vote. We're dividing ourselves. We're dividing ourselves. What happened to freedom of speech? You have the freedom of speech. But freedom of speech doesn't come without consequences. See, I feel you guys can disagree with me. If you go along with the Democratic Party, I'm not demonizing Democrats. Oh, I gotta go to bed. I'm gonna say this. If you go along with the political left, right, there's no consequences. People praise you. But the moment you stand for something and it happens to be conservative, then you get called names, right? And these names dehumanize you. Oh, okay. I thank you for the catch up. I see you. These names, that's okay, Keezer. These names go when you want to dehumanize someone, you call them outside their name. So instead of calling Republicans, you call them Satan worshippers, Nazi, and all kinds of things. Because then it makes it seem as if there's something bad and evil because you have traditional values. And it shouldn't be that way, all right? Freedom of speech isn't free. So that's why it's important to call people what they are. Treat people with kindness and respect because words are powerful. And I noticed that a lot of times when people refer to the Republican Party, they tie racism into it. And that's just not right. You cannot say that racism could come in anybody. That's an individual thing. It's not a party. Because if you want to talk about racism, then I don't like those kind of conversations because then I would have to say that it was the Republican Party that fought for the civil rights of Black people, that fought for civil rights for people, and a lot of them gave their lives. It wasn't just Blacks that fought, right? We fought alongside each other, and people don't like to talk about that. And the Democratic Party, back in the day, okay, was responsible for the laws that held Blacks down. And now we're in 2026. Everybody, no matter what your race or gender is, can make it in this country. But it's wrong to classify Republicans as this racist party because they're not. If a person is racist, that's an individual thing that does not go to any political party, whether you're a Democrat or whether you're a Republican. So I prefer, if you're a Democrat, I'll call you a Democrat. I'm not going to call you a demon worshiper or anything like that. But if you're a Republican, you should be call people by their name or don't make stuff up. Okay? On that note, are we still friends? Are we still friends? Facts. I've met racists from both political sides. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Are we still friends, you guys? All right. Let me write why USA guy can't get into all that stuff tonight. All right, I love you guys. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. I appreciate you guys. Big hugs. I'm praying for the country. Stay safe. And we'll be back later. Feel free to put a comment under my community wall if you guys want me to cover something. Other than that, we'll be Mr. B, we'll be back later today. Damage, good to see you. Claude, Dr. Manhattan, thank you guys for hanging out with me. Thank you, chat. Hugs, Jonathan. They are, you need to wake up. Emu, since you started talking, I only coughed once. Oh, good, Dr. Manhattan, feel better. Yeah, I can't wait to get over this coronavirus. So hopefully I'll be better later. Okay, you guys, I'll talk to you guys. Bye, Keezer. Bye, you guys.